Hi everyone, Gustav here. Today I would like to show you one technique which is quite similar to the field parameters, but it's a little bit different. So let me explain. Even if you have unselected both items here on the slicer, as you can see here, either the previous year or target are selected, you can see that only the actuals are visible on the charts. So if you pick the previous year and the target, you might display both metrics alongside with the actuals, both on the column chart and a line chart. However, if you unselect both elements, also excluding the previous year, now you can see that only the actuals are actually visible. So basically speaking, let's make one step back and discuss quickly the field parameters, because field parameters are in most cases the best solution in order to achieve this dynamic selection of the metrics. So in that case, we just have a single selection for the field parameter. We have field parameter here and fixed actuals. So if we have the single selection here, you can basically decide whether you would like to have the previous year as here on the chart alongside with the actuals or the target. This one, in this example, you have also the field parameters. Nevertheless, this one is based on two separate field parameters. One is here on the left side to actuals, one is on the right side to actuals. So you can either pick one of them to display only one, for example, previous year. You can also have both selected, and you have three scenarios in total, like previous year, actuals, and the target at the same time. The minor drawback is that if you unselect both items, the field parameters actually works as everything is selected. So even if we unselect both scenarios, you can see that now they are still visible because the slicer in relation with the functionality, which is field parameter, works in a way that it's treated as all selection. So if I think it's still gonna be like a quite niche technique, it will be used rarely, I would say, in general. Nevertheless, if you face a situation, if you actually need that functionality when you can decide which metrics should be displayed. However, if you would like to have this functionality when nothing is selected, let's just don't display this metric on the charts, or yeah, maybe basically on the charts, because in the tables there is no like the column suppression, so it works a little bit differently. Nevertheless, in charts it might be useful in some niche use cases. So once again, if you pick, for example, the previous year, you can see that now the previous year is visible both on the column chart and in a line chart. If we unselect both, nothing is visible, only the actuals are visible. If you pick the target, only the target is visible, and we can also decide to have both at the same time, and they are displayed side by side with the actuals. So let me quickly describe how it works. It's created with the 100% the same logic in terms of how the column chart is structured and how the line chart is structured. So the logic stays the same for both charts. What we have here is one of our measure is just actuals. In that case, it's placed in the middle, but it all depends on your scenarios and on your metrics. It doesn't even has to be like related with the scenarios. You can have like the revenues, costs, and different types of the metrics that you would like to have either turn on or turn off, and it can also work well in different use cases. What we also have both in the column chart and in line chart, we have like per one measure per every scenario or the metric you would like to have displayed. So it's not like with the field parameters when you actually might have like the one field parameter which brings a lot of selections. You just have one metric per each scenario that might be displayed in a chart. So for that reason, we just have to have like this logic applied to each metric separately. So let's assume that we want to have the previous year and the target. So if we already have, depending on how you structure your, let's say, the metric in the previous year value, we now, as an example, have the revenue previous year. So in this additional logic that I would like to show you today is that we're just referencing as a variable the whatever metric you have for the previous year. Then we have this scenario name. As this measure is designed to display the previous year, I just have this phrase PY. The PY has to be corresponding to the slicer selection, which derives from the disconnected table. I will show you that in a second. So it doesn't necessarily have to be as a variable. I just personally like to have it as a variable. So that name has to be corresponding to the slicer selection. Now what is important is that we just need this application of additional is filtered. It's the check which allows us to either display some metrics or not. So in that case, the is filter is important. And one additional logic that we can apply instead of using the standard selected value, which in most cases works well for the single selection. In that case, as we might have the multi-selection, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like only 2 scenarios, it might be 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 in some cases. We want to bring this table with our scenarios. In our case, it's only like it only includes 2 scenarios, which is the previous year and the target. And we are filtering this table by these scenarios which actually have this name. So in that case, we are just filtering this table by the row which is named the previous year in that case. And we are counting the rows of the table. So in other words, if the selection of our slicer contains this selection, contains this previous year, it brings a value greater than 0 because the previous year is included in a set of selections. So coming back to the logic, this is also important. So we have one check here, the second check here, and our result is that we are checking if our requirements are met. So if this specific column is filtered, which is here, and also if the scenario check contains rows which is the greater than 0, then brings the value whatever we have. In that case, we have the revenue previous year. Otherwise, it just returns blanks. So in that case, if our selection in a slicer contains the previous year as it is here, now the previous year will be displayed. However, if we unselect, so in that case, nothing is even filtered, then we just don't bring the previous year. And the same logic we have for the target in that case. So for the target, the only difference actually is the reference for the scenario value, because now we don't compare to previous year, we just retrieving the value for our revenue target, and we just change the previous year to this abbreviated name, because this is the abbreviated name I use in a table that serves as a slicer selection. So the logic stays the same. We're checking whether it's filtered, and we're checking whether this selection set includes the rows with, in that case, with the target. And if both conditions are met, let's bring this value. So in that case, we have applied both metrics at the same time, and we can basically have this logic. One additional thing, of course, there are small different nuances here. So one can be related with the legend. So in that case, the legend is not so dynamic. So even if we have unselect both of the elements, now the legend still displays all of this information, all of these possible scenarios to be selected, because it derives from the measures and not the field parameters. So it might be an additional caveat here. And the second thing, what we can also do, for example, for the line chart, we can, instead of using the standard legend as here, we can bring the series labels placed on the right side near at the end of the lines. Of course, in that particular use case, it looks quite nice, but we already know that it doesn't have to be always look so nice, because we might have the values at the end of the specific time frame that are quite close to each other, and some of the series labels won't be even visible. And there might be some cases when given line won't reach their latest period, so the series labels appears here, but the line ends here, for example. So the series labels also have like additional drawbacks to consider. Nevertheless, I just wanted to show you that there are some kind of the possibilities we can utilize. And just one additional thing, no affiliation here, but I just wanted to mention that this suppression of the columns of the metrics also work well for the Zebra BI functionalities when we actually exclude given metrics from the tables on the chart. So as far as I experienced that, it worked quite well in that case. But this use case, of course, that we walk through today is related basically with the native functionalities, and it's the core of our today conversation. So that's basically all I wanted to share with you. I know it's gonna be like the niche technique, but maybe sometimes it's gonna be useful for you. So this is potential solution for that challenge. So if you enjoyed the content so far, please feel free to subscribe to the channel and see you again next time. Bye bye. Cheers.